Burkina Faso, 2024. The early morning light stretched across the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, washing the marbled hallways in gold. Inside the private quarters, President Ibrahim Traoré sat at his desk, a manila file open in front of him. He didn't move. His eyes scanned the document with silent precision, absorbing each word with measured calm. The report had arrived only an hour earlier, hand-delivered by Colonel Aminata Sow, head of counterintelligence. The contents were brief but lethal. Credible threat detected. High-ranking member of the Presidential Guard has been compromised. Contract received. Target, President. Method, poison or close-range firearm. Source, foreign interest. Traoré closed the file and leaned back. No sign of panic showed on his face. He had become familiar with danger long before he ever stepped foot in the palace. He understood betrayal, not just in theory but in blood and consequence. Still, this was different. This wasn't an external strike. This was an infection from within. And it required a different kind of response. He reached for his cup of tea, paused, and set it back down untouched. 3 days earlier, a new addition had joined his security detail. Moussa Diarra. 32. Former Special Forces. Flawless service record. Recruited after an internal reshuffle meant to strengthen security following recent international tensions. On paper, Moussa was everything the job demanded. But Traoré had noticed things. The way Moussa positioned himself a step too close during briefings. How he scanned the exits more frequently than the guests. The cold calculation in his eyes when no one was watching. There was discipline there, yes. But there was also distance. A wall. Something unreadable. Traoré had learned to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive through revolutions and attempted coups. He didn't need proof to start watching. He just needed silence and patience. The first test was subtle. A change in protocol. Traoré altered his route from the main chamber to his residence, a minor deviation. Moussa hesitated. Not visibly, not to the untrained eye. But to a man like Traoré, that split second of recalibration was enough. Later that day he summoned Colonel Sow to his study. "We don't act yet," he said quietly. "He's not working alone. Someone paid him. I want to know who." Sow nodded. "We'll monitor communications. Every call, every message. No confrontation? Not yet. Let's give him room to make a mistake." Over the next 48 hours the trap was laid. Communications were rerouted. Surveillance was installed in the guards' quarters and in the armory. Every meal, every drink that reached the president passed through a new chain of custody known only to 3 people. But the most important part of the operation was psychological. Traoré continued with his daily routine. Public meetings. Diplomatic phone calls. A visit to a local school in the outskirts of the capital. He remained calm, consistent, as if nothing had changed. But every move was calculated. Every presence documented. And Moussa was always near. On the morning of the 3rd day, Moussa delivered the president's coffee. A simple gesture. Routine. Standard. But this time Traoré was ready. He reached for the cup, paused, then looked at Moussa. "Would you mind bringing me the document from the cabinet behind you?" he asked. Moussa turned. Traoré switched the cup with an identical one prepared earlier, untainted, untouched. Moussa returned, unaware. "Thank you," Traoré said and took a sip from the clean cup. Later that evening an intercepted call confirmed what they feared. A burner phone. 1-minute call. Voice encrypted. He drank it. Payment after confirmation. Extraction in 24 hours. The line went dead. Traoré stood at the window of his office, looking out over the quiet gardens of the palace. The wind rustled the trees, whispering secrets in the dark. He stayed there for a long time, silent. The time for observation was over. Tomorrow he would make his move. The next morning arrived with a deceptive stillness. The skies were a muted gray, the type of overcast that seemed to stretch forever, casting a heavy hush over the palace grounds. Inside the inner halls of the presidential residence, the energy had shifted, subtly but decisively. The palace staff moved about their duties as usual, but those in the know could feel the pressure, the silence before the storm. President Ibrahim Traoré had slept little. He had spent the hours before dawn reviewing footage, listening to recordings, analyzing every movement and word that Moussa Diarra had made since his assignment began. His plan was no longer one of survival, it had evolved. He was no longer simply protecting his life. He was preparing to unmask an entire network. At 7:40 a.m., Traoré met with Colonel Aminata Sow in the war room, a secure location beneath the palace. The room, sealed with biometric locks and soundproofed walls, was known only to 5 people in the entire government. Maps, satellite feeds and live camera streams lit the wall behind her. "He's communicating through a military-grade encrypted app we're still trying to crack," Cao said, standing over a tablet. "But we've mapped his movements and cross-referenced with previous contact points. There's one constant." She tapped the screen. A face appeared. Colonel Idris Kayemba, former intelligence chief for the previous administration. Fled the country after your rise. Current location unknown, suspected to be in Abidjan. Multiple shell companies. Ties to Western intelligence groups. We believe he's funding the operation. Traoré looked at the screen without emotion. Kayemba had once stood beside him during the early days of the transition. A man of calculated charm and subtle cruelty. When the regime shifted, Kayemba had vanished. But Traoré had always known that the man would not stay quiet for long. "Good," he said. "Let them all surface. Let him think he's succeeded." "You want to fake your death?" Cao asked, her voice firm but uncertain. "No," Traoré replied. "I want them to believe I'm dying, slowly. Let's give them a taste of their own weapon." The plan was unconventional. Dangerous. But it would serve a higher purpose. Not just to expose Musa, but to unravel the web of betrayal behind him. Traoré would act as if he had consumed the poison. The staff would be informed of a sudden illness. Rumors would be allowed to spread. Medical professionals loyal to the state would be briefed, media would be kept in the dark, and Musa would be left to believe that his mission had succeeded. By 10 a.m. the operation was underway. During a routine meeting with members of the Agriculture Council, Traoré's hand began to tremble. He coughed lightly, excused himself from the room, and was seen by several aides stumbling slightly in the corridor. Cameras caught the moment. It was enough. Within hours, word had leaked into the inner staff that the president had taken ill. Medical personnel were seen entering the residence. Colonel Cao oversaw the movements personally, ensuring that the narrative remained tight and plausible. In the surveillance room, they watched Mousa's reaction. At first, nothing. He remained stone-faced, neutral. But later in the break room he made a call. Short. Clip. "It's done. He's not well. Won't last the week. I'll be ready." They had him. But Traoré wasn't finished. That evening he requested a private meeting with Musa. The setting, a side garden on the eastern side of the palace, where he often met with aides for casual discussions. Hidden cameras had already been placed. The location was secured, every entry point monitored. At 7:13 p.m. Musa arrived. His posture was relaxed. But there was a flicker of tension in his stride. He approached the bench where the president sat, back straight, hands clasped behind his back. "You asked to see me, sir?" Traoré looked up at him, the shadows from the garden lights casting long lines across his face. He appeared weak. "Well, yes, Musa. Sit." The guard hesitated, then obeyed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I've been feeling strange," Traoré said, his voice soft. "My doctors aren't sure what's wrong. It began the day before yesterday. You were on shift then, weren't you?" Mousa's eyes flickered. "I was, sir." "There was tea," Traoré continued. "You brought it to me. I remember the aroma was different. Slightly bitter." Musa shifted in his seat. "I wouldn't know, sir. I only delivered what the kitchen provided." Traoré turned to look at him directly. "I trust my guards, Musa. But sometimes trust is misplaced. What do you think a president should do when trust is broken?" Mousa's voice caught in his throat. I wouldn't know, sir." Traoré stood slowly, wincing as if in pain. He took a few steps, then turned back. "If you ever had to choose between duty and survival, which would you choose?" Before Musa could respond, footsteps approached from the side path. Colonel Cao appeared, flanked by 2 armed operatives. They moved swiftly. Musa stood, hand reaching instinctively toward his holster, but the command was already shouted. "Stand down." He froze. "We've been listening," Cao said. "Every call. Every word. Every lie." Mousa's face drained of color. "You're under arrest for conspiracy against the president, espionage, and attempted assassination. You have the right to remain silent." Traoré watched him as he was restrained, his expression unreadable. "You should have asked yourself, Musa," he said quietly. "Why I drank the tea and never flinched." Musa didn't speak. He only stared, not at Traoré but at the ground beneath his feet, as if the weight of his choices had just become real. As the guards led him away, Traoré turned to Cao. "Now," he said, "we follow the trail. It doesn't end here." And it didn't. The arrest of one man had opened the gates to something far larger. What lay ahead would test the limits of loyalty, power, and control. But for now the trap had been sprung. And the president was still standing. The night air was heavy with silence as the convoy left the palace compound, carrying Musa Diarra in the back of a reinforced security vehicle. He sat cuffed, his hands trembling slightly, his eyes locked forward, refusing to look at the agents on either side of him. Though calm on the surface, his mind raced. The plan was supposed to be clean. Quick. The payout guaranteed. The escape prearranged. But now, everything had collapsed. Inside the palace, President Traoré returned to the war room. The first phase was complete, but the deeper threat remained. Musa was just the surface. The tip of something more corrosive. Something well-funded, strategically placed, and waiting for another opportunity. Colonel Sao stood at the head of the operation table, flanked by intelligence officers and a digital forensics team. A projection of Musa's call logs, movement patterns, and intercepted communications glowed on the large screen. Dozens of red threads connected names, numbers, and foreign aliases. At the center of the web, Idris Kayemba. He's funding more than just Musa, Sao said, pointing to a cluster of financial routes traced to shell companies in Ivory Coast and Senegal. We've tracked over 8 separate transfers to operatives operating in West Africa. The operation wasn't just an assassination. It was destabilization. Traoré stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. They're not just after me, he said. They want chaos. A return to dependence. A collapse they can rebuild in their image. Sao nodded. There's more. Our contacts in Abidjan have spotted Kayemba. He's under diplomatic cover with a forged identity. But we can't touch him there, not yet. We don't need to, Traoré replied. We just need to expose him. The plan was now shifting gears, from defense to offensive counterintelligence. The betrayal had become an opportunity. If they could connect Kayemba directly to the attempt on Traoré's life, and make that connection public, it would dismantle not only the immediate threat but also the external power structures supporting it. The first step, interrogation. Back at the secure detention facility beneath the National Gendarmerie headquarters, Musa sat in a metal chair under a harsh white light. A camera watched from above. The room was bare. No windows, no clock, no visible exits. Time was removed as a weapon of its own. Colonel Sao entered, carrying a single folder. You've been in this line of work long enough to know what silence buys you, she said, placing the file down. Nothing. Musa didn't answer. We know about the payment, she continued. We know who you called. We know how they got to you. You were promised a new life. A future far away. But that future is gone. Still he remained silent. Then she opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was of his younger sister, 13 years old, walking to school. We also know where your family lives. You think they'll be safe if Kayemba thinks you talked. Musa's jaw clenched. You're not protecting them by staying quiet. You're endangering them. He exhaled slowly, eyes still fixed on the floor. He wasn't the only one, Musa said at last. There's a network. Ex-military. Businessmen. Some still in government, hiding in plain sight. Sal leaned in. Names? Musa hesitated, then whispered, There's a meeting. 3 days from now. Kaya. They're planning the next phase. If the first attempt failed, they'd escalate. What kind of escalation? He looked up, face pale. An explosion. Public. High casualties. Blame placed on a separatist group. The goal is panic. Discredit the government. Make it look like you've lost control. Sao stood abruptly and exited the room, locking the door behind her. She moved quickly back to the war room, where Traoré stood with his arms crossed, staring at the latest data feed. They're planning a mass casualty event, she said. 3 days from now. Kaya. Traoré turned slowly. Then we beat them to it. We take Kaya out of the equation before they get there. The following hours became a blur of movement. Orders were issued. Safe houses activated. Troop movements masked as routine drills. Undercover agents embedded into transit hubs, border stations, and public transportation lines. A full lockdown of strategic locations was planned, covert, swift, precise. But there was one more piece to the puzzle Traoré needed. The press. A carefully crafted leak was released to select international journalists. Rumors of a failed assassination attempt. Speculations about internal betrayals. Whispers of a rogue faction plotting chaos. Nothing concrete. Just enough to stir interest. And then an anonymous message was sent to Idris Kayemba. Ibrahim Traoré is alive. He knows everything. Your operative talked. Your network is burning. They didn't sign the message. They didn't have to. Within hours, Kayemba was on the move, his sudden change of location flagged by surveillance allies in Côte d'Ivoire. He was boarding a private plane to Dakar. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré watched it all unfold on screen. This is the part they always underestimate, he said to So. They believe we're just surviving. But we've been building something they can't kill. She looked over at him. What now? He turned, his voice quiet but firm. Now we cut the head off the snake. The trap for the Kaya operation would require precision. A decoy. A fake rally. A leaked manifesto to lure the conspirators into believing they had the perfect target, and the perfect cover story. They would come. And this time, Traoré wouldn't be waiting behind glass. He would be in the open. A symbol. A challenge. The war was no longer in the shadows. It was stepping into the light. The wind swept across the northern plains of Burkina Faso as military convoys moved through backroads under cover of dusk. Their destination, the outskirts of Kaya, a town known for its resilience, its markets and now, unbeknownst to most, its role in a secret war. At the heart of the convoy was a heavily shielded operations van, its interior buzzing with live feeds, encrypted communications and the hum of tactical tension. Colonel Aminata Sow leaned over a large map spread across the console table, marking potential approach routes and exit strategies. She spoke without turning. Drones confirm movement. We've got 3 SUVs en route from the Ghana border, consistent with what Musa described. They're headed for the rendezvous point near the old textile mill. President Ibrahim Traoré stood behind her, dressed in civilian clothes under a plain brown overcoat. No ceremonial medals. No military insignia. Only a small earpiece connected him to the field teams. They won't be expecting resistance, he said. They think the state is fractured. Let them walk in believing that. Sal looked up. And you, Mr. President? I'll be where they can see me. They're not just attacking a man. They're attacking the idea of stability, of sovereignty. They need to see that idea still stands. An agent entered briskly, handing So a small device. Intercepted signal, he said. Confirmation from Kayemba's proxy. It's happening tonight. 2300 hours. They're using the rally as cover. Everything was now in motion. Hours earlier, a community development forum had been publicly announced for Kaya, part of an ongoing national initiative that had been genuinely in the works for months. The twist, this particular event didn't exist. It had been fabricated, its invitation list handpicked, its time and location carefully leaked to the right people through encrypted but monitored channels. The conspirators had taken the bait. What they didn't know was that the venue, an old concrete warehouse on the edge of town, had been retrofitted with surveillance equipment, signal jammers, and covert security teams embedded into the crowd. By 10:30 p.m., black SUVs rolled into a discreet alley behind the building. 5 men emerged, all armed, all dressed in plain clothing with civilian coats concealing body armor. One carried a duffel bag which intelligence identified earlier as likely containing the explosive. They didn't know they were being watched from every angle. Traoré arrived 15 minutes later, flanked only by Colonel Sow and 2 plainclothes operatives. He insisted on walking the final distance alone, through the crowd gathered outside the venue. Some had been planted there by his team. Others were curious locals who had heard rumors of the president's appearance. They didn't know they were standing at the edge of a planned massacre. As Traoré entered the building, the conspirators were already inside, mapping the placement of the device, arguing in hushed French over the best timing. One of them paused when he saw the president enter. No, it can't be him. He's supposed to be ill, dying. He's not, another hissed. Get to the car. Abort. But it was too late. From the rafters above, a green laser dot swept across the chest of the man holding the bag. Red dots followed. A voice echoed through the chamber. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded. Make a move and you will not walk out. Panic flashed across their faces. One lunged toward the bag, but a single shot cracked through the air, catching him in the shoulder. He dropped, screaming. The rest raised their hands. Colonel Sow stepped into the open, weapon drawn, her tone clear and measured. You're under arrest for attempted terrorism, conspiracy against the state, and high treason. You'll be tried under the highest jurisdiction. Traoré walked slowly toward the group, his eyes locking on the man writhing on the floor. I wasn't the target, he said. This country was. You would have murdered children, elders, workers, all for the illusion of chaos. One of the men, trembling, whispered, We had orders. We were just. No, Traoré interrupted. You were just cowards. You thought no one was watching. You thought your money would protect you. You thought Burkina Faso was still the puppet it used to be. He turned to take them in. Make sure the world sees their faces. Outside, the media, deliberately alerted moments before, captured footage of the arrests. Headlines would run within hours. Assassination plot foiled. President Traoré walks into trap, disarms it. Burkina Faso strikes back. But this victory was not for the headlines. Back at the palace the following morning, Traoré stood before a closed room of ministers and commanders. Footage from the night before played silently behind him, every frame a reminder that the danger wasn't gone. It had simply been revealed. These men were not alone, he said. There are others, inside our walls, beyond our borders. Some wear suits. Some wear uniforms. They do not want to see an Africa that builds for itself. They fear it, and they will kill to stop it. He paused. But we are not afraid. We do not run. We do not hide. We face them with eyes open, hands steady, and hearts full. The room remained silent. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. Traoré had not just survived an assassination attempt. He had transformed it into a message. And that message would echo across the continent. The sun rose slowly over Ouagadougou, casting long shadows over the capital city. But for the people of Burkina Faso, that morning light felt different. Lighter. Stronger. As if something heavy had been lifted from the air. For weeks, the nation had murmured rumors of uncertainty, whispers of illness, threats, instability. But now the truth was out, and the truth had a name: betrayal. And yet, their president still stood. In the heart of the capital, a press conference had been called. It was unexpected, unannounced, and deliberate. Cameras from both local and international outlets crowded the small briefing hall. Reporters whispered among themselves, some scrolling frantically on their phones, others clutching notes with trembling hands. At exactly 8 a.m., President Ibrahim Traoré walked onto the stage. No grand entrance. No music. No entourage. He stepped up to the podium in a simple black suit, the Burkinabe flag pinned discreetly to his lapel. For a moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, not in the detached language of diplomacy, but with the clarity and conviction of a man who had come face to face with death and returned with something to say. 3 nights ago, he began, an attempt was made to destabilize this nation. Not by a foreign army, not by an open enemy, but by those who walk among us. Those who once swore loyalty. Those who chose money over honor. The room was silent. An explosive device was smuggled into a venue prepared for civilians. Innocent people. Elders. Children. The men responsible have been apprehended. But make no mistake, they are not the root. They are branches of a withered tree that has fed on African weakness for generations. His eyes scanned the room. Let this be clear. We are cutting down that tree. We are no longer beholden to shadows, to foreign interests cloaked in diplomacy, to internal traitors hiding behind privilege. Burkina Faso belongs to its people. And we are awake. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't political, it was human. Earnest. Traoré waited for silence to return before continuing. The man at the center of this network, Idriss Kayemba, is currently under observation by international authorities. We are in communication with our allies in the region. He will face justice one way or another. He stepped back from the podium. I didn't come here today to celebrate survival. I came here to declare war. Not a war of blood but of truth. A war of transparency, of sovereignty, of rebuilding Africa by Africans for Africans. He walked off stage. No questions. No fanfare. Just a message left hanging in the air like smoke after fire. In the days that followed, Burkina Faso entered a state of calculated transformation. Traoré signed a series of executive orders aimed at restructuring internal security operations, establishing a permanent investigative commission to root out infiltrators and protect national integrity. The Presidential Guard was retrained and reassigned. Every high-ranking official was subject to vetting. Old loyalties were re-examined. New ones were forged in fire. Colonel Aminata Sow was promoted to lead a newly established Bureau of National Integrity, a force answerable only to the state and to the people. Internationally, the story broke like wildfire. News outlets that had long ignored Burkina Faso were now running headlines. Asterisk, the president who outsmarted assassins. Asterisk, Africa's new lion, Ibrahim Traoré survives and strikes back. Asterisk, editorials emerged, praising his restraint, his tactics, his refusal to retaliate with vengeance but instead with truth. Traoré didn't bask in it. He remained at work. One evening, weeks after the arrests, he walked the streets of Kaya again, not surrounded by guards this time but by locals. Mothers offered him bread from their stalls. Young men approached shyly, asking questions about leadership. Children reached for his hand. One boy, no more than 9, tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true," the boy asked, "that someone tried to kill you?" Traoré knelt beside him. "Yes," he said. "But they didn't succeed." "Were you scared?" Traoré smiled. "Only for a moment. Then I remembered why I'm here." The boy nodded, thinking. Then said, "I want to protect people too." "You already are," Traoré replied. "By standing strong. By not running from fear. That's what protecting people means." He stood and continued walking through the crowd, the people parting like water to let him pass. He wasn't just a politician. He wasn't just a president. He was something more now. A symbol. Of resistance. Of wisdom. Of Africa unafraid. In a secure vault beneath the palace, a folder sat sealed and marked with a single word: Operation Black Veil. Its contents: the full details of the assassination plot, the people involved, the funding lines, the diplomatic cables, would one day be declassified. For now they remained locked away. But one document from that file had been copied, framed, and hung in Traoré's private study. It was a transcript. A single line from the intercepted call that started it all. "Tomorrow. No. He'll be alone. Perimeter will be clear. Payment final afterward." It hung as a reminder, not of fear but of vigilance. Because the game never ends. But for now Burkina Faso was still standing. And so was its president.